On this episode, we're going to talk about what do you do when you test the cable, it still works, but the computers aren't working. Welcome to the show where we tackle the tough questions submitted by installers, estimators, project managers, customers, and even IT personnel. We are connecting at the human level so that we can connect the world. If you're watching this on YouTube, would you mind hitting the subscribe button and the bell button to be notified when new content is being produced? If you're listening to us on one of the audio podcast platforms, would you mind leaving us a 5-star rating? Those couple little steps helps us take on that nasty algorithm, which helps us educate, encourage, and enrich the lives of people in the ICT industry. Thursday nights, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. What are you doing? I do a live stream on TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and eventually Instagram, where you get to ask your favorite RCDD questions about design, installation, certification, estimation, project management, even career path questions. But I can hear you now, Chuck, I'm driving my truck at Thursday nights at 6 p.m. I can't watch a video. I'll crash and then I'll lose my job. They're recorded, and you can access all of them at our website at letstalkcabling.com. Next, while this show is free, and it will always remain free, would you mind considering supporting this platform? By clicking on the QR code, you can buy me a cup of coffee. You can schedule 15 minutes with me offline after hours, of course. You can also go to Patreon, become a Patreon member. They get access to additional information. You can even become a corporate sponsor. All those steps helps us make this industry just a little bit better. So let me ask you this question. Let's say that I'm the cable guy and I've tested the cable's fine. I performed the simple troubleshooting stuff that you just kind of went over, and I've determined it's not a cable problem. It's something wrong with the equipment. What is a good way to have a conversation with the customer, letting them know, look, it's not us. It's on your end.
That's always the hard conversation, right? It's like dating. And here's where I'm going to tell you guys, a lot of you didn't get into this to be in sales. Many of you said, I don't want to be in sales. Sales is yucky. I want to be, where the manly stuff is, the cabling, that's cool stuff, right? The truth is, in any industry, we all have to be a little salesy.
Yep.
And this is where your humanity, your ability to communicate with other humans comes into play. You need to be able to respectfully tell the customer and say, hey, listen, here's my test results. Usually when I inundate the customer with all the information that I have done, it appeases the customer enough to move on. Now, some customers are harder than others, especially some engineers, because we get really too wrapped up in our own head to really listen. We're not good listeners. We're good, information givers.
Right.
One of the things that we like is to see you physically doing everything you can do. I was watching him and this guy was running back and forth, double checking his cable. He did this and this and this and this. I don't need to see everything he did. From that amount of hustle, I'm able to determine he did everything he knows how to do to determine his cable is clean.
Going into that kind of detail, or that kind of effort, like you just mentioned, that goes a long way with building customer confidence. A long way. And what that could do, what could end resulting doing for you is they may sole source future work with just you because they know you're going to take care of them. You have their best interests at heart. That's where a lot of people, and I've told people all the time, everybody from the apprentice in the field to the project manager to the owner of the company, you're in sales. If you're in front of the customer, you're in sales, period.
That's right.
And just kind of backtrack a little bit from the apprentice. What do you mean I'm in sales? Don't show up in the job site with tattered pants, shirt with food stains all over it and stuff like that. Be professional, because like it or not, people judge you based on your looks. You look professional, they're going to take you word faster than somebody showed up looking like, dude, I just came off the beach surfing, dude. There's nothing wrong with surfers. Nothing wrong with surfers. Don't want to get that out there. So let me change that scenario just a tiny little bit. So that's how you would explain to the customer. Let's add another layer of complexity here, right? That's the previous scenario was assuming that the customer does their own IT stuff, right? What about when the customer, they hire an IT company to do their IT stuff and hire you to do the cable stuff? And now you're telling the customer, look, hey, here's what I did. What's a good way to explain that to the customer? Because they're going to have to explain it to their IT contractor.
Usually, and this is the way I handle this, right? I'm an engineer for a good portion of my day. And then I do the cabling at night and things of that nature, right? I install WAPs and things like that. So I'm basically an engineer again, or an IT admin again. So what I do is I provide the customer a physical report. I print everything out for them, and I say, give this to this guy, and here's the proof that everything worked. And if I did a birth certificate, I pull up the birth certificate and pull up the testing, and I say, look at the impedance. It didn't change. Look at my dB level. It didn't change. Look at my signal noise ratio. It didn't change. My frame loss, my jitter, my packet loss. It didn't change. No CRC errors, zero. And most customers are going to look at you and say, I don't know what you said. So what I'll usually say is, I'm going to put green on what's green, and I'll put red on what's red. Or I could develop a graph for the customer. Now, a lot of this, for some structured cable guys, they'll say that's going way past it. Remember, we're in the relationship game. You need to build relationships with your customers, because when times get hard, they trust the guys they have relationships with. They're not going to go to the guy that, as you mentioned, the surfer dude, or the guy that just came off the street. They want the guy that they've done business with for 3 years, 5 years, or even that first time that came in and explained everything so well to them. Hence the sales game. If you explain that to them so well, they're going to trust you. They're always going to call you. So have reports, print something out, and don't tell me you don't have that on your truck, because they now sell printers this big that you can put on there. You can absolutely print that stuff. You can email it to the customer, say, I'm going to email everything to you. You can email it right at their site, plug right into their router, do what you need to do, and email it and say, did you receive the email? That's an important step, by the way. Did you receive the email? Have them pull it up. Have them read it with you. This is probably not what I don't know, Chuck. I don't think you talk about this much, or maybe you do, but we're also in the counseling game, because or the education game, right? Because the customer doesn't understand what you do. As a matter of fact, they look at you as an expense, as a loss of money and a loss of revenue. They never look at you at how to gain money. It's one of the counseling things that I do with my customers, and I teach them how IT actually makes them money versus how they think it's just an expense and a loss.
Not only does it make them money, it can cost them money, right? Because if you have a network that's only running at 75% because of whatever issue, whether it's a physical layer or another layer, how do you just explain to them, look, when you go to click that download to download that huge, image for that medical device, or that big file because they're a photography company, or the as-built, the prints for a construction company, and now it takes extra time. How do you calculate how much money you're losing because it's taking extra time to download those large documents every single time? So it's also about that as well. And I like you said, but wait, on my list, I can't talk today. On my website, I have a list of 146 pro tips. And pro tip number 1 is document, document, document. It's more important than pro tip number 2, which is communicate, 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 right? We work in the communications industry, Ed. What do we suck at?
Communication.
Okay, just saying. Communication. Yeah.
We are to be consultants.
So let me ask you this, without giving any details that will get you in trouble. What is the most difficult troubleshooting thing that you had to troubleshoot?
Okay, so that question, I would have to say, is it at my regular job, or is it in my night job?
You choose.
Right. So
you choose.
What I'm going to tell you is the same. It's not the same. It's not the same issue that happened, right? Because it happened here and it happened here, or it happened in my day job, it happened in my night job, if you will, or my personal business. But it is the same problem that comes up, and that is intermittent issues.
Oh, those are the
Cus-
hardest to find. Oh,
the
Lord have
customer
mercy.
says, today at 3 p.m., I took this many hits on my network. Fix it. Oh, okay. It may be the cable. And here's the thing that'll really get you. Customer ran his own HDMI cable and decided to use zip ties to zip tie it all around. Well, guess what he zip tied to? Guess what he used to run? Um, and I may have used J hooks. I may have used whatever I could to run it, depending on what the customer wanted to pay for, what the design was. And guess what he did? He just went and cinched down. And of course, my cabling being Cat 6 started developing an impedance, started developing signal loss, started developing all this stuff. But you know what? It was really weird because I couldn't figure out why it only happened at 3 p.m. So come to find out that the customer liked to move the TV and some equipment while he went to go chop up his stuff for the restaurant so he could watch his TV and do what he's doing. When he did that move, it would put extra stress on the cable because they were all so tight. They were so tight that it would make a bend, just that little bend, and boom, there's my drop. And I didn't know. I didn't know what I had to do. Here's what I had to do. I took a day off of work. I wasn't working where I work today. I took a day off of work, sat there the whole day with my laptop, just watch it. Just watch it. Now, many of you may not be able to do this, but you maybe the solution is for you to run a new set of cables and you would have caught the zip ties and things, right? But I sat there and watched, and when I saw him turn that, I said, "Hey, what are you doing there?" He's like, "Oh, at this time, my program, what I would like to watch and everything is on, and this is when I do my prep." Oh, okay. So go ahead and look at the signal and pop, pop, pop. There's my hits. There's my frame loss. There's my jitter. There's all the things that are happening on my network. I'm like, put it back, put it back, put it back. It's back to normal. This happens on many network levels. It happens on my day job, on my WAN engineering job, and it happens all the time. So look for something simple. Has anybody changed anything? If you're working with fiber optics, has anybody gone and opened up a splice case? Was there a maintenance done that evening? Those are the things that will cause these intermittent problems.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
have one more that I got to tell you.
But before
I
you do
had a
that, let me interject this real quick.
oh, go ahead. Go
So
ahead.
whenever customer says you're having a problem and you get there, the first question you should ask them is, what has changed or been done on this floor, this building, since it's worked, since you found this problem?
That's right.
So go with your story.
So the next one is we had a circuit a very important circuit for a building where there's a lot of trades happening, right? There's a lot of trades, and I said I was in Chicago, so you can imagine one or the few buildings that it is, right? So all of a sudden, we kept taking hits at specific times, and they may have worked for our company or not. It was in a major data co-location facility, and we happened to see that our circuit kept coming up and down, up and down, up and down. And we didn't understand why. And we troubleshot from the application layer all the way down. You know what engineers are going to do. Oh, get an OTDR, shoot a signal, do this, do that. The customer was just frustrated beyond belief. Now, what we come to find out is that at specific times, there was a technician that was just a little bigger than what you would expect. And when he was moving around, the first technician that installed the circuit did it very lazily and just left the fibers hanging. So what happened is this larger technician kind of would bump it with one of his body parts, whether his leg, his butt, his stomach. He'd bump that LC connector so much that he had just cracked it just a little bit. And every time he'd go to wire in a new cable in there, he would hit that circuit. He'd hit those pair of fibers, and boom, there goes my circuit, right? But it didn't go all the way down because the minute he moved back, it would come right back up. It was insane for us. So what we did was something that in the AT&T world, they call a Class A. So the fix was to reinstall the circuit from the beginning to the end, all brand new cabling, even though it's on the same path. But new DWDM gear, new wavelength, new everything completely different at every location, right? New panel, etc. And it fixed the issue. When we went to investigate and they actually went to disconnect the original circuit, they found that the LC connector just broke right in their hands. So bad design on the original data center to put that panel so low that it would be touched by body parts. Bad install by the original tech, and bad on the larger tech who wasn't watching his steps.
Right. So I had a situation similar to that. Right, we had I was a young cable tech. It was one of our anchor customers. It was a huge law firm. We did the cabling on their thing, and they had one of the secretaries, one of the paralegals for one of the main partners, was complaining that their computer would go down intermittently. Right, and you hit the nail on the head. Intermittent problems are the pain in the world to figure out. And so the customer called us up. We went out there. We tested the cable. It was fine. So we told the customer it's not the cable, and we signed off and left. They had the IT company come out, look at it. Working fine. It's not us. Must be a cable problem. So the customer got fed up with this, again, the whole finger pointing thing. And they said, okay, look, you, the cable people, and you, the IT people, will be on site Tuesday at 9 a.m. and nobody's leaving until we get this fixed. So we get there. We test the cable. It's fine. The IT guy tests everything. It's fine. So we're sitting there. We're just kind of talking. And the lady's working on the computer's working fine. And we're like, we don't know what this is. Why, are you sure? It's, and all of a sudden she goes, it's not working. It's not working. And we looked over and sure enough, the computer went down. So I immediately threw the cable test on her. Had a short across all 4 pairs. And then it went away. I was like, what the heck? So I got my ladder out. I started tracing the cable down. The guys who ran the cable, they ran, the paralegal was right outside of an HVAC room. They ran the cables through the HVAC room. Now, most HVAC systems in large office buildings are on springs. So that way, when they turn on and off, they don't vibrate the floor, right?
Mm-hmm.
The guy ran the cables through the springs. And every time the HVAC system would turn on, it would ground it out. Oh, Lord have mercy.
Oh, I've got stories. I mean, it depends. I don't know how long your show is, but we could go on for a little bit because I've got some inside wiring stories where people ran high bandwidth, 1 gig, 10 gig, copper circuits through inside wiring in, 30-story buildings, and they're wondering why it won't work. And, because they're going from Cat 6 to like Cat 3 or less, right? I don't even know what that old stuff is. And going through there. And it's like twisted pair. Like, dude, you can't do that. Or they'll run a Cat 6 to ABAM. And this is a common misconception. Some engineers with major tenure, and if you know who you are, and I call you out, I'm not going to call your name, but you know who you are. It's like, but it's ABAM cable. It's thicker, so it can handle more megahertz across it. Just punch it down. It's good.
Punch it harder. Harder.
It doesn't work because it's Cat 6. It's twisted. It has the divider so that the electromagnetic fields won't crosstalk. The A-band cable doesn't have that. Just because it's thicker cable doesn't mean you can do it.
Okay, and so we talked a lot about troubleshooting, right? What are some courses or maybe some videos? I love YouTube. YouTube and TikTok, great resources. You just got to evaluate where it's coming from. What are some good videos or courses that somebody can take to help them learn troubleshooting skills for as far as equipment?
Well, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. YouTube and TikTok and all the other video platforms and social media platforms have really overtaken what we used to know as the telecommunications training. I don't know. I don't know where or when you came up, Chuck. Like, I don't know what type of training they gave you, but I remember getting the 6 DVDs that was like 30 hours of a guy saying, "Hello,
yes,
my name is,"
in that monotone. Yes.
Yes.
This is how you pull cable. Step 1. Wear appropriate PPE. Personal protection equipment. Oh, that's why I don't have any hair. It's not because I'm old. It's because I watch them videos and
And sometimes you get the ones that were trying to be cool, so they'd have that chicka wow wow, and they would come up and be like, "Let me go punch this down. Let me go punch it down, guy. Check it out. This is a 3M puncher. That's right. It's the
Yes.
weird one. It's
Yes.
like, dude, oh my gosh. So today, thank your stars, guys. Thank who you worship, because I'm going to tell you right now that you got guys like Network Chuck. Chuck, you need to
Not
meet
me.
Network
That's
Chuck.
somebody else. I've
That's a
seen his
different
stuff.
Chuck.
Oh, his stuff rocks.
Excellent, entertaining.
Yes.
Obviously, we have Chuck with Let's Talk Cabling. So we're not going to get deep into that because we know who he is. That's why we're here,
Right.
right? But you got Network Chuck. You got animated. I think it's an animated power cert. I think they're called. You got a buddy of mine, a very good friend of mine, Naj Kazi, who is teaching how to get your CCNA. I know that's probably not what you want, but listen to his basic OSI model. Listen to him talk about the physical layer, because you will be enthralled by what he's saying. Crosstalk Solutions is another guy that, oh my God, I watched this guy. He likes to talk a lot about ubiquity networks, those devices, but just listening to the guy, he's an amazing guy. Now, there are paid for services still out here that I can easily tell you to go to. So CBT Nuggets is an obvious one that everybody in the industry knows and understands. You've got CompTIA. You can always go to CompTIA. You can
Right.
watch some of those videos for free on YouTube, but they are out there. But there's this really cool guy who makes it really simple out there, in regards to networking, that I had his app installed on my phone for years, since he started up. It's called Network Lessons. He breaks things down. What he likes to do, he was doing this before shorts were a thing. He gives you a short on like what's a domain controller. You know, here's a short, and all of a sudden, as a cable person, all you need is to understand what that is and what it does, because you may get an IT guy that says my domain controller is failing, and you may be so into your specialty, the physical layer, that you're like, well, I don't know what a domain controller is. Why do I need to know what a domain controller is? Oh, I just need to understand that my physical layer is up and running.
Right.
So figure it out. Not my problem. But he likes to break things down really simple at first, and then gets really deep down to the configuration on the Cisco. So guys, look into Raspberry Pis. Do not think that they are not something you should be looking at in any industry. The Raspberry Pi and what's being done for those single board computers is insane.
Yeah. Those are all great tips, by the way. The only thing I would suggest is make sure you always evaluate the source. You named excellent ones. There are some people out there. I'm only going to point this out. Just what you got to watch out for is, I watched a video. It was on TikTok. It was somebody showing how to mount a piece of plywood to the wall to mount your equipment on. They attached the plywood to the wall with plastic anchors. Plastic anchors. Now, and when I sent them a message, I didn't correct them on in the actual channel. I sent them a direct message. Said, look, that's not the best way to mount a piece of plywood. I said, for framed walls, you should be using galvanized screws that are at least a half inch longer than the thickness of the gypsum board and the plywood. That way it goes into stud. For non-framed walls, you should be using toggle bolts, spread no more than 2 feet apart, at least 2 inches away. And they said, well, they're rated at 50 pounds each. We got 6, it'll be fine. You don't know what the customer's going to hang off that plywood after you leave.
That's right.
So, drywall anchors, not a good way to mount a piece of plywood to the wall. And besides, plastic melts in the heat. So if it ever catches on fire, that thing's coming off the wall pretty easily. So, always evaluate your source, but you named some really, really good ones.
May,
Last
may, may,
question.
may I
Yeah,
add
go
one
ahead.
more thing really
Yes.
quick? If you're coming up and you're kind of techie, because not everybody that does cabling is techie, but there are some super techie guys out there that love the cabling part of it. They just love the tools, the construction piece. I do talk tools, by the way. I like tools.
I love you. I love your videos too on the tools. And did you see? I challenged you. I found a measuring wheel for like $4.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I can beat that. That was too good. I don't know if I'm going to beat that. But learn Python if you're techie. God, Python is, oh my God. You may be the guy that invents the next app that can help other cable installers with some of the things that we talked about today. Doing birth certificates, keeping records of cabling, things of that nature. So learn Python, please, please, please. I can't express that enough. I'm
Right.
at the a pinnacle beginning the down roll of my career. Python, I should still learn it, but you know what? I got maybe another 10 years and then another 10 years at Home Depot as a greeter in my career. That's what I see it.
Hey,
Home Depot.
you be easy to make the videos because you already be there.
Yes, Home Depot, hire me in 10 years, please. But please, I can't express that enough, especially for guys that can't, afford like a TrendNet R15,000, I think it's called, or the
Right.
Fluke Network IQ or whatever. Learning some of these other software applications, you could stick two computers and do that testing because that's all those Flukes are.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned the CCNA. I think that's the entry level certification for CompTIA, right?
No, no, no. So CCNA is the Cisco
Okay.
certification. So CompTIA has its own certification. So CompTIA is a I believe it's a group of people who set standards for networking, computing, and things of that nature. So if you wanted to get like your A plus certification, that's your computer basics. And then from
Right.
there, you get your network plus certification, which gets you into basic networking. But then from there, if you wanted to, you would graduate to the CCNA or the Sienna certification, or there are other companies that offer different certifications at that level. And at that point, you're basically somebody that's behind a router plugging in
Right.
commands all the time.
And you don't necessarily have to go that high. As a cable installer, if you take those first couple courses you mentioned, that helps you have a better understanding of, maybe why it's not working. And that gives you the potential to make more money because you
That's
can solve that problem. The customer likes to call one person, right? Or that as a company, that gives you the ability to bill more for that person because they can do multiple things. So that's always a great thing. So earlier, before we started doing the official part of the interview, you mentioned some pretty cool stuff that you're doing to help the ICT industry. Why don't you expand on that? Let's get that message out there. What are you doing?
Oh, okay. So since I'm a network engineer working on the WAN side, and that's where my career started, and as I kept growing, I started learning more about IT and things of that nature because I'm one of those guys that's in Spanish, it's mil usos. That's 1,000 uses. In English, it's that jack of all trades, master of none. But remember, it ends like this: better than a master of one. So that's
Hmm.
that's me. I am not the smartest, best guy when it comes to networking, but I'm pretty good. And I'm not the best guy when it comes to cabling. I'm not like all green lights, but I can do cabling. So what I've done is taken those skills and I wanted to help the community. I wanted to give back because my parents came here with nothing, nothing. I mean, we were poor growing up. And now I have a pretty decent life. Thank you to the industry, thank you to the companies that have hired me, and I want to give back. So what I do is I provide free services at times or very low paying. So I charge very little for what I do, which is IT consulting, network consulting for small, medium businesses that are Hispanic, African American owned. And I'll do it's not necessarily a race thing. So I'll take care of anybody and everybody. But my community that I'm around is predominantly African American and
Right.
Hispanic.
Yep.
And they really don't understand the value of IT. They don't even know that they think IT is dumb, useless. Some of them won't even put it unless they got to put in a credit card machine. So when you start teaching them the value of putting up a website, social media, the networking that needs to go into it, the structured cabling, not just running a cable across the restaurant that you paint over, right?
Right.
When you start teaching
Code
them the
violation. Code violation.
that's right, no fire stop in between the holes that they drilled
Right.
out because they had to do a 2-inch hole for a small Cat 6 cable. Things like that when I started donating my time to and giving back. And I have, and it's not to toot my own horn, guys, but I have helped businesses grow from a guy in a closet thinking he wasn't going to make it, almost crying himself to sleep because he's not making enough money to feed the family, to now a multi-million dollar
Nice.
corporation with
Nice.
hundreds of employees. And
Nice.
he won't hire any other IT guy. He says, Ed, I know you have a day job. I will wait for you. That's what I talk
Nice.
about relationships. That's what I'm
Yes.
talking
Yes.
about. That's how you build that. So I have
Yes.
that trust level, but now I charge him quite a bit of money.
There you go. It works. It works out long run. Let me ask you a question. Do you include old cable knuckle dragging guys in that thing? Because
Well, of course.
I'm buying a PoE switch to mount right there. I'm a cable guy, not a network guy. I don't know. I'm going to plug it in. I don't know what to do with the thing. You can help me set that up?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And by the way, I do got to say this, Chuck. You have no idea how many times I've walked into some of these other businesses that have recommended me and say, please hire Ed. Trust me, you'll love him. I go in there and they'll say, this guy's just a knuckle dragger. He's just here to run the fiber optic cable, the multi-mode cable, and the Cat 6 cable. He's just going to mount the boxes. And they're sitting there troubleshooting. And this is one of the things we were talking about earlier. Have humility, have the ability to just take it. I know it's hard. I know it's hard. Trust me, I get mad all the time. But have the humility. And you won't believe how many times these guys are sitting there trying to set up their router and are banging their head. And I said, hey, do you mind if I drive for a second? Like, what do you know about this? I know a little bit about it. I jump in, start setting all this stuff up. He's like, dude, you just set up the VLAN. You did this and this and this. Yeah. Your issue was your broadcast domain. You needed to do this. And your issue was this and this and this. Here's your issues. I fixed them. Here's what you need to do. Oh, well, thanks. You're not just a knuckle dragger. No,
Right.
I'm not.
Right.
But if you are just centered on cabling by adding some more skills, you make yourself that much valuable and that much more trusted. That guy, do you think that guy's not going to recommend me for his next job? He already has.
Preach it, pastor. I love it. I love it. Yes. Last thing, you're all over social media. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, how do they find you?
Ed the Old Tech Guy at yahoo.com is my email address. You can find me on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram as Ed the Old Tech Guy. I predominantly talk about tools because in my regular everyday job, I have NDAs, and they're tied to circuit SLAs, right? Service level agreements and things of that nature, NDAs. And I also have certain clearances that I can't talk too much about. So those clearances and things, I try to stay off of where I work and what I do there. So my social media is predominantly about the tools we use in the trade. You will see me hanging some network equipment at some of these private clients that give me the permission to do so. I won't do it unless they give me the okay. And
I give you permission to use, when we set up my router that I'm getting from Wise Components, I give you permission to record and put anything out on social media.
You got it. You got it. So please find me out there. I love the feedback. I've had some of you say, Ed, that doesn't look professional, but this and this and that. And sometimes there's a lack of understanding that I'm not working at a data center. I'm not working at I'm working sometimes with customers that don't even understand the need for a router. They think they just go to Best Buy and buy the Linksys router, hook it up, and that's all they needed.
Right. So I hope you enjoyed this 2-part series because we covered a lot of stuff. Make sure you go visit Ed the Old Tech Guy on his social medias. I love his content. I trust his tools video so much. I sent him a tool that was sent to me to evaluate. That's how much I trust this guy. Make sure you check out his content. Until next time, knowledge is power.
That's it for this episode of today's podcast. We hope you were able to learn something. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. Also, leave a rating so we can help even more people learn about telecommunications. Until next time, be safe.